Good morning, Miss Blair. Thank you so much for meeting with me. I really enjoy having Jacob in my class. He's a very bright student who's eager to learn.
Thank you so much for having me. My husband and I really appreciate everything you do for him.
That's wonderful. It's my pleasure. But as you know, all the students took the Iowa Test of Basic Skills, and I would like to go over Jacob's test scores with you.
I know Jacob takes several tests, but what is the purpose of this specific test?
Okay, well, the Iowa Test of Basic Skills, also known as the ITBS, is basically an achievement test. It is given towards the end of the year so that I am able to see what Jacob has learned throughout the year, and it shows me where he is academically. So here is the performance handout so that you can follow along with me. The test scores are broken down into two sections of information: the norm reference information and then the criteria reference information. The first section we will cover is how Jacob compared to the norm group.
What is a norm group?
A norm group is a sample of test takers who are representative of the population for whom the test is intended, and it's a group of students who take the test before the test is released. And the test scores are compared to the scores of this group of test takers. So in this case, the ITBS's norm group consisted of 3,500 students, and this portion represents Jacob's scores in comparison with the norm group. So in short terms, it's just basically telling you that this is how these students did on the test, and then this is how Jacob scored on the same test.
So how did Jacob do?
Okay, well, let's take a look at it together. This test covers all the content areas, so reading, language, math, social studies, and science. And here's what we have: the core total, which is the subtest for the basic or core areas such as math, language, and reading. And the composite total is the subtest for all content areas. Now I want to show you the area that says SS. And this stands for standard score, which is a specific score that allows us to average the test scores and compare them to other test scores. So let's take a look at vocabulary in the SS section, as we also examine the bell graph so that we can see where his scores fall. And here is the bell graph. The standard scale for the fourth grader ranges from 181 to 223 with a mean of 200. And as we can see, Jacob has scored 210. Therefore, according to the standard scores, if we look at the bell graph, we can see that he falls slightly above average, which is really wonderful. Do you have any questions before I move on?
What does GE stand for?
Okay, I'm glad you asked. GE stands for grade equivalent, and there's a certain way we read this number. The number on the left of the decimal point indicates the grade, and the number on the right indicates the month and the year. So we would read this score in vocabulary as 5th grade, 5th month.
Well, since Jacob's in 4th grade and the score says 5th grade, shouldn't he be able to skip a grade or be bumped up? He also has a lot of 6th grade and even 7th grade.
I can understand your confusion. It's a little bit misleading. Allow me to explain. A grade equivalent actually tells us what the student in the norm group scored on a 4th grade test. So in other words, a student who was in 5th grade took the 4th grade test in the 5th month of the year and scored the same as Jacob did in vocabulary. So it's not really telling us that he's ready for 5th grade curriculum as far as maturity, but it's telling us that he's above average and he's doing very well. Does this make a little sense now?
Yes, that is very clear. Thank you for explaining that. You're right, it is very misleading.
Awesome. Okay, so let's move on. The next norm reference is the score is NS, which stands for National Stanting, and the score are some of the easiest to read. And the Stanting scale is divided into 9 simple numbers, 1 through 9, and then 1, 2, and 3 are the lower scores, and 4, 5, and 6 are the middle scores, and 7, 8, and 9 are the upper scores. So if we look down the row at Jacob's scores, we can see that it has 5, 6s, and 7s. If we look over here on the bell graph, we see that he is scoring average and is slightly above. So he's doing really well. Do you see this section on the bell graph?
Yes, I do. Wow, it's awesome. I'm really proud of him.
Good. Yeah, so it shows the area or the category most people tend to fall. So looking at the numbers, you can see that Jacob is at the middle to the higher end of the section. So in vocabulary, his score is 6. Do you see this on the bell graph?
Yes, I do.
Awesome. Okay, so now let's look at the section that says NPR, and this stands for National Percentile Rank, which is again referring to the norm group. Jacob scored in the 75th percentile, and it's very important not to confuse percentile with percent. It's not a percent. The 75th percentile is basically saying that Jacob scored better than 75% of students on a national level. So look at the bell graph. Do you see where Jacob falls on the graph? The scale measures from 1 to 90, with the middle or mean being 50. So Jacob is above average. Do you have any questions so far?
What are the little bands in percentile rank section?
Okay, well, there isn't a perfect test out there. There are bound to be errors. So every test has a standard error of measurement. The band is saying that on any given day, Jacob could take a test and would score a couple of points above or below that true score in percentile. It's a way to make up for standard error of measurement. Do you have any questions about the norm reference scores before I move on to criterion reference scores?
No, I don't have any questions about the norm scores, but I am not sure what the criterion reference scores are.
Okay, well, criterion reference information tells us how students are doing based on standards in their specific grade level, rather than being compared to a norm group. It breaks down all the different content areas into smaller standards or objectives. For example, if we look at spelling, we can see that it's broken down into more targeted sections such as root words, affixes, and correct spelling. This basically shows us that these are the specific objectives we focus on in spelling. So let's look at one of Jacob's higher scores, inference and interpretation. Now, this is Jacob's ability to read a passage or understand how to infer information that the author is not revealing. So interpretation deals with the ability to responsibly interpret what is being read. And Jacob does really well at these skills. You can see that this area shows the total number of items was 14, and the number attempted was 14. This column shows that he got 93% correct, and as opposed to the national average correct, which was 66%. And you can also see the rank column and see where Jacob falls on the scale. By looking at these scores, do you see anything that you might have questions about?
I can see that most subject areas Jacob falls in the mid-range, but I am a little concerned about the scores that fall below the range, such as capitalization, names of organizations and groups.
Okay, so let's talk about that first. First, the objective is basically dealing with capitalizing the first letters of certain organizations, such as Boy Scouts, and this definitely is not uncommon for Jacob to be struggling with this area. Here, let's take a look at the worksheets in his portfolio. So we can take a look at some of these. And see, he does really well with capitalizing names, titles, and even knows how to capitalize certain organizations, but he seems to miss a few. And it's common for a few to be missed, but we actually are reviewing this idea through a capitalization game I've created in the class, and I created it because I know it is common it's a common mistake for students. If Jacob really isn't exposed to seeing these organization or group names, he may not be able to connect to it. Furthermore, there were only 3 total items on the test, which automatically causes the percent to be low. And this is nothing to be concerned about. Jacob will continue to progress over time.
Well, what about correct spelling? Should I be worried about his spelling?
Okay, well, let's first look at objectives in spelling, root words. Jacob does very well in this area. Let's take a look at some more of his work in his portfolio. Here's a few more samples. See, he understands that root words are frequently used as part of common words. However, in areas of spelling, he seems to make a few minor errors. Jacob struggles with things such as when you place I before E, or when you use C versus S. And he also struggles with the TIOUS and tends to use SHUS, so he spells logically rather than correctly. It can be hard sometimes to understand the way that English language works, and words are not always spelled the way they sound. And here, take a look at some of his writing journals. As you can see, he's a great speller and a writer. He simply struggles with a few of the rules of spelling. I have created a list of words that Jacob tends to struggle with, and I would like to send them home every day to write. Repetition will help. So if you can just help me oversee that he makes this a habit, I do believe that we will see him improve greatly. Please also know that this test is just one way we are finding out how Jacob is doing and if he will be passing to the 5th grade. We use plenty of other methods such as my observations, performance-based assessments, and benchmarks. But right now, I am more than confident that Jacob will be passing to the 5th grade. And I do understand that this is a whole lot of information, but do you have any questions for me?
No, I really think I understand how to read these scores. Is there a chance I can have a copy of this information?
Yeah, most definitely. I prepared a packet for you to take home since I will not be able to go over the subject area. And in the packet I have a copy of the handout that defines the test scores and the report and the bell curve. And then I have, if you have any questions like at a later time when you're reviewing the information, please feel free to email me or call me. Also, if your husband might need to hear more, we can set up another conference. Whatever will help you both understand your son's scores, I am willing to help. I have Jacob's best interests at heart, and I know that without a doubt that you will do well. As we continue to work together for his good, Jacob will continue to succeed in his education.
Yes, definitely. Thank you, Ms. Collins. It has been so much help. My husband and I appreciate you.
Thank you so much. I enjoy having your son in my class. Thank you so much for coming in today.